Should I tell my best friend that she hurt me by not really including me in her wedding? My best friend of almost a decade got married about a week ago. A week. 7 days that felt like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. I've replayed the events of those days so many times in my head that they've become a blur, a strange mix of joy, confusion, and sadness. When she told me she was engaged, my heart leapt with excitement. After all, this was her, my person, the one who had been there for every pivotal moment of my adult life. I thought we were mutually each other's best friends. Turns out, I didn't even make it into her top 3. The realization hit me like a slow-moving wave, creeping up until it consumed me. This was the person who I saw regularly, whose couch I had cried on more times than I could count, whose laughter had been my soundtrack during so many road trips and late-night conversations. We had traveled together across oceans, through foreign cities, and into the kind of memories that I thought could only be shared by people deeply intertwined in each other's lives. We'd celebrated birthdays with more enthusiasm than some people reserve for weddings. We toasted to job promotions, comforted each other through heartbreaks, and held space for dreams and fears we wouldn't dare share with anyone else. And yet, as I sat there in the pew during her wedding ceremony, it was as if all of that suddenly felt like a collection of snapshots from someone else's life. How had I gotten it so wrong? How could I have thought that I was her closest confidant, her ride or die, when apparently, I wasn't even in the running? I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it was the stress of the wedding, the countless decisions she had to make, the inevitable family pressures that come with planning such an event. But then the memories of everything we had shared came flooding back, unrelenting and insistent. This wasn't just a friend. This was the person who officiated my wedding last year. My wedding. The one day I had hoped to make as meaningful and personal as possible, and I had chosen only her to stand by me in that sacred role. I didn't even have a bridal party because I wanted to keep things simple, but her role was anything but simple. It was deeply symbolic. She wasn't just another guest, she was the thread tying everything together. I remember how seriously she took that role. How she had cried during the ceremony as she spoke the words that united me and my husband. She had joked afterward that she felt like she was the one getting married because of how emotional it had been. And I believed her. I believed that she felt the same weight of significance in our bond as I did. But now, I couldn't help but wonder if I had been wrong. Had I misread everything? I thought back to the years we'd spent weaving our lives together. The long nights talking about our hopes and fears. The shared love for obscure movies and spontaneous adventures. The inside jokes that no one else could ever understand. If our friendship wasn't the kind that made the cut for her top 3, what did that say about all those moments? About me? About the person I thought I was to her? As the days passed after her wedding, the questions only grew louder, more insistent. I found myself scrolling through old photos, us laughing on a beach, sitting in tiny cafes in cities far from home, wearing ridiculous costumes at Halloween parties. Each image felt like a little betrayal now, a reminder of a connection I had held sacred but that, apparently, wasn't mutual. And yet, despite the sting of realization, a part of me couldn't fully accept it. Maybe there was an explanation I hadn't considered. Maybe I was reading too much into this. Or maybe it was time to face the painful truth that I had been clinging to an illusion of closeness that only ever existed in my mind. Before I knew who her wedding party was, I had eagerly offered to do a reading. It felt natural, almost reflexive, like returning a cherished favor. She had officiated my wedding the year before, taking on a role that was both symbolic and deeply personal. The thought of standing by her in some capacity during her own big day seemed not only appropriate but almost inevitable. It wasn't a question of whether I wanted to be involved, it was a question of how. When she agreed, a couple of weeks later, she said, "That would be great. We're keeping the wedding party small." Her voice was casual, almost too casual, like she was trying to smooth over something unsaid. I was a couple of drinks in when I fully registered what she meant. The realization hit slowly, like a puzzle piece snapping into place after you've spent too long staring at it. I wasn't in the wedding party. I plastered on a smile, raising my glass to toast her. Of course. I'd love to do the reading, I said, my voice steady and upbeat. Inside, though, there was a sharp twinge of confusion and disappointment. I told myself I was overreacting, that the reading itself was meaningful, and that she would surely include me in other ways. After all, she was my best friend. I had officiated her role in my wedding, made her the sole person with a special part. Surely, this was her way of balancing the scales, keeping things simple. Right. Still, doubt lingered. Maybe I wasn't a traditional person, and maybe she knew that about me. I told myself that she probably thought I wouldn't care as much about titles in roles. Maybe that's why she felt comfortable leaving me out. And yet, as the months passed, something about that explanation felt hollow. I wasn't upset about not wearing a dress that matched the others or standing in a line during photos. What stung was the implication, intentional or not, that I wasn't as integral to her life as I had believed. As the wedding planning continued, my excitement for her was tinged with a growing ache of alienation. I offered to help several times, mentioning I'd love to pitch in with decorations or run errands. Each time, she responded politely but vaguely, never taking me up on it. I even tried to drop hints about how much I was looking forward to being a part of her day, but they seemed to go unnoticed. At first, I chalked it up to the chaos of planning. Weddings are stressful, I reminded myself. She's probably just overwhelmed. But the more time passed, the clearer it became that I wasn't really a part of her plans. I wasn't asked to join her for dress fittings or cake tastings. I wasn't invited to the bachelorette party. By the time the wedding rolled around, I hadn't even seen her in person in weeks. It was as though I had been reduced to a spectator in her life, standing on the sidelines of an event I had once assumed I would be central to. And then came the rehearsal dinner. Or, more accurately, the realization that I wasn't invited to it. I had been looking forward to the weekend, preparing myself for the role I would play in the ceremony. I had practiced my reading, making sure every word carried the weight and sincerity it deserved. But as I scrolled through social media the evening before the wedding, I saw photos from the rehearsal dinner, her laughing with her wedding party, arms draped around each of them like they were a tightly knit family. My stomach dropped. No invitation. No mention. Nothing. I tried to brush it off. It's just a dinner, I told myself. The important part is the ceremony. But deep down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of what I thought our friendship was. It wasn't just about the dinner, it was about what it represented. Even though I was technically part of her wedding, it felt more like a formality than a reflection of the bond we shared. Or the bond I thought we shared. One small request I had made felt like a lifeline, something tangible to hold on to amidst the growing distance. I had asked if we could get a professional photo together during the wedding. Nothing elaborate, just a simple picture of the two of us to frame alongside the one from my wedding, where she had stood beside me, officiating the most important day of my life. Of course, she had said at the time, smiling brightly. But when the wedding day came and went, there was no photo. No moment carved out for us. The opportunity slipped away, unnoticed by anyone but me. I kept waiting for her to pull me aside, to share a quiet moment where she'd remind me that I mattered. But that moment never came. Instead, I found myself standing in the background, smiling through the ceremony, clapping during the speeches, and pretending that everything was fine. Inside, though, I was unraveling. By the time I got home that night, I felt hollow. The day that was supposed to be a celebration of love and friendship had left me questioning everything. Was I ever really her best friend? Or had I been holding on to a version of our relationship that only existed in my mind? Needless to say, I'm baffled and saddened by the whole thing. It feels as though I'm holding the fragments of a friendship that once felt unbreakable, trying to piece them together in a way that makes sense. But no matter how I turn the pieces, No matter how many times I replay the moments leading up to her wedding, they don't fit. The confusion twists into an ache that I can't seem to shake. I'd like to pretend that I'm not hurt, to convince myself that this is just one of those things that happens in friendships over time. But it's not that simple. Her wedding has forced me to reevaluate a relationship I once considered on par with family. No, scratch that it was family. She was the person I turned to in moments of crisis and joy alike, the person whose opinion I valued above all others. She was the one who could make me laugh until my stomach hurt, who could sit with me in silence when words felt unnecessary. And yet, somehow, in the span of one weekend, everything shifted. I went from thinking she was my ride or die, my forever friend, to feeling like she didn't want me around. The transition was so subtle, so insidious, that I didn't even notice it at first. But now, in the aftermath of her wedding, the signs are impossible to ignore. Every unanswered offer to help, every unreturned text, every missed opportunity to include me, it all adds up to a painful realization. Maybe I've been holding on to a version of our friendship that she outgrew long ago. What makes it worse is that I'm not the only one who noticed. Other people who know both of us have commented on how strange it is. They've asked why I wasn't in her wedding party, why I wasn't at the rehearsal dinner, why I wasn't more involved. And I don't have an answer. All I can do is shrug and offer some vague excuse about how weddings are complicated, about how she probably had her reasons. But even as I say the words, they feel hollow. To be fair, I know their perceptions of our friendship might be biased. After all, I've always spoken about her in glowing terms. I've shared stories of our adventures, of the times she was there for me when no one else was. To them, she's my best friend, the person who knows me better than anyone. So, of course, they'd think it's weird that I wasn't a bigger part of her wedding. But their confusion only amplifies my own. If everyone else saw us as inseparable, then why didn't she? My husband, on the other hand, doesn't see what the big deal is. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," he says, his tone calm and practical. He's never been one for dramatics, and he's certainly never been one to dwell on friendships the way I do. In his world, relationships are simple and straightforward. People drift apart, it's just a part of life. But what he doesn't understand is that this isn't just any friendship. This is the friendship. The one that defines so much of who I am, of how I see myself. To be fair, he doesn't have any close friendships that are anywhere near as intimate as this. He doesn't know what it's like to have a person who feels like an extension of yourself, someone who can finish your sentences, who knows your quirks and flaws and loves you anyway. So, when he tells me to let it go, to move on, it feels dismissive, even though I know he's only trying to help. He sees the pain it's causing me, and he wants to fix it in the only way he knows how, by convincing me that it doesn't matter as much as I think it does. But it does matter. It matters so much that it feels like a piece of me is missing, like I'm mourning a relationship that I'm not even sure is gone. Is it possible to grieve something that might still be there, just in a different form? Or am I holding on to a ghost, refusing to accept that the friendship I cherished is no longer the one I have? As I sit with these thoughts, the questions spiral. Should I confront her? Should I ask her why she didn't include me, why she didn't think I was important enough to be a part of her wedding in the way I thought I would be? Or would that just make things worse? Maybe my husband is right. Maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. But then again, maybe I'm not. Maybe this is a moment of clarity, a painful but necessary realization that our friendship has always been a little one-sided. The truth is, I don't know what to do. I don't know if talking to her would bring the closure I need or if it would only create more distance between us. All I know is that I can't stop thinking about it, replaying every moment of the past year in my mind like a movie I can't turn off. And the more I think about it, the more it hurts. Should I bring this up to my friend, or should I just stay quiet and distance myself a bit? The question loops in my mind, an incessant hum that keeps me awake at night. On one hand, Saying something feels like a necessary act of honesty, a way to salvage a friendship that once meant everything to me. On the other hand, what if bringing it up only makes things worse? What if it creates an awkward tension that we can't recover from? I can't help but wonder, would speaking up bring clarity, or would it confirm my worst fears? There's a part of me that fears hearing the words aloud, the admission that maybe I've been grieving a friendship that was never as deep or as mutual as I thought. To confront her would mean risking the illusion I've clung to, the belief that we were more than just occasional friends, that we were family. It would mean forcing her to answer questions she may not even want to think about. And then there's the timing. I didn't want to bring it up before the wedding because I didn't want to be the person in her life causing drama during an already stressful time. Weddings are chaotic, emotional, and all-consuming. The last thing I wanted was to add to that by making her feel guilty or defensive. But now that it's over, the window feels both open and somehow closed. Too much time has passed for it to be a natural conversation, yet not enough time for the sting to fade. The wound is still fresh, raw in a way that makes every word feel heavier than it should. I ask myself again and again, Wibda, if I brought this up a month or more after the wedding, would she see it as me trying to gain some clarity, or would she see it as an unnecessary rehashing of something she likely doesn't think about at all? And, more importantly, do the benefits of understanding outweigh the potential awkwardness that might come from the conversation? The truth is, I don't know. I don't know what I'm hoping to gain by talking to her. Am I seeking an apology? A reassurance that I still matter to her? Or am I simply looking for validation that my feelings are justified, that I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill? Maybe it's all of the above. Or maybe it's just the lingering grief talking, the part of me that can't accept that this friendship might not be what I thought it was. If I don't say something, the distance between us will only grow. That much is certain. It will fester like an unspoken truth, a quiet rift that neither of us acknowledges but both of us feel. I'll start pulling back, protecting myself from the possibility of more hurt, and she'll likely move on, unaware of the weight I've been carrying. But maybe that's for the best. Maybe distance is what I need to heal, to recalibrate my expectations and focus on the relationships in my life that do feel mutual. Still, there's a stubborn part of me that wants to fight for this friendship, to preserve what's left of it before it slips away completely. But fighting requires both sides to show up, and I'm not sure she would or even that she should have to. Maybe I've been holding her to a standard that isn't fair, projecting my own ideals of friendship onto her without considering that her experience might be different. Maybe she does care, just in a quieter, less overt way. And so I sit here, torn between two choices, each carrying its own risks and rewards. If I talk to her, I might get the closure I need, or I might shatter what's left of our friendship. If I stay quiet, I might protect myself from more pain, but I might also lose her entirely. It feels like a no-win situation, one where every outcome leaves me questioning whether I did the right thing. For now, I think I'll let it rest. Maybe time will soften the edges of this hurt, making the conversation feel less urgent or less fraught. Or maybe it won't. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and decide that the risk of awkwardness is worth the chance of clarity. Either way, one thing is certain, this experience has changed me. It's made me reevaluate not just this friendship, but all of my relationships. It's forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes, the people we hold closest don't always hold us the same way. And that's okay. It doesn't erase the memories, the joy, or the love that was once there. It doesn't make the friendship any less real or meaningful. But it does mean learning to let go, to move forward with gratitude for what was, and acceptance for what is. It means learning to find peace in the uncertainty, even when it hurts.